So, hello everyone. I'm super happy to be here, but I must say I feel a bit as an outsider because I'm a scientist, so I don't do anything really practical. But I figured out that the people here invited me because I study how people solve and come up with new solutions to complex problems. So perhaps it's a bit of useful for you. And so let's start with with one problem that was really complex, and some of you know it, is Fermat's last theorem, which basically says that for any n greater than 2, there's no n that satisfies this equation. And this is a really famous problem. And the funny thing was that Pierre Fermat wrote it in roughly the year 1637 and wrote that I have discovered a truly marvelous proof of this, which is basically I don't have space to write it down here. And for the next 3.5 centuries, mathematicians were trying to solve this complex problem. So this is a really complex problem that has taken the lives of many mathematicians. And then Andrew Wiles came. Andrew Wiles is a British mathematician. He worked on this problem, on Fermat's last theorem, in secret for 7 years. Then he put out the proof. But another mathematician found a mistake. So at first it seemed it's a small mistake, but then Andrew Wiles writes that it turned out to be a colossal mistake. So it basically undermined everything. And he worked on it, he tried to solve it, and the biography writes that he was willing to give up. He was ready to admit defeat. But he decided he will anyway go and try to figure out why this one particular aspect is not working. And then he writes, suddenly, totally unexpectedly, I had this incredible revelation. And basically what he writes is that he suddenly understood the solution, the final piece that he was missing, and that helped him to solve this big problem, Fermat's last theorem. And as a scientist, I try to understand what goes on in the brain when these kinds of things happen. What happens when you solve a problem and when you have this effect of, wow, I now know, I now understand. And I study these moments because, as Andrew Wiles also said, it was the most important moment of my working life. And of course, not all of these aha moments will be the most important lives of our most important moments of our lives, right? But they are very important. I guess some of you have had something like this. Of course, you haven't worked for 7 years in secret on some big problem, right? But you have your problems that you face during your work or during your everyday life, something that you have tried to push through, you haven't been able to solve, and then perhaps you have had this moment of, okay, I see it. And actually, this example of Andrew Wiles is a very nice one, but I think that this phenomenon is a very common one, and we have it basically every day. I came with a car with the next speaker today in the morning, and I had several aha moments during that time, and he told me of one nice aha moment he had recently. And as a scientist, I try to study these kinds of moments, and just to show you that, when we ask people about whether they have had some aha moments, then we get some responses. Then here are 2 responses from students. One who writes that the biggest aha moment for me has been turning from an omnivore to a vegetarian, from basically changing with one aha moment that, wow, I have to change this. And the other student wrote that it was that moment that I realized that this is my problem that I have to deal with. So, in short, when we study this, when we ask people, we see that people experience this kind of aha moments, and usually they are very rewarding, they are very pleasant for that person, and they are meaningful. And that is one of the key reasons why then I actually study this. Nevertheless, here you might be asking, okay, why am I here? Why am I listening to this? But one of the questions that I try to tackle in my research is actually, okay, how can we facilitate that people come up with these solutions? How can we help people find that aha moment? And you see, right, some of these aha moments might be more trivial, but there is this sweet spot between the big aha moments of Andrew Wiles and the small aha moments that are meaningless. There is this sweet spot that we care about. These are the problems that are important for our lives. They might be something related to our work. We have a problem that we want to solve. We have to develop something that is difficult, that is novel. We don't know how to do it. It might be something in our private lives where we are facing a tough decision regarding our lives. We don't know how to solve it. And as I showed, there are also people who might have problems with the questions like, I don't fit in, it seems that something is wrong with me, what is my problem? And in all these cases, in this sweet spot, I think that if we study the mechanisms of aha moments, we can actually help these people. So that's why I do it, and that's why I hope that, at least some of this will be interesting for you. When I do my research, then I also study questions, for example, how this actually happens, like what are the mechanisms inside our brain that lead to this aha moment? So when we look at the activity of neurons and populations of neurons, what happens there when we come up with an aha moment? And as I work in the Institute of Computer Science here in Tartu University, then I also study this mechanism with the question of, okay, if you understand this, if you understand how these solutions come in the human brain, is this something we can implement in artificial intelligence? So these are questions I work on, but I won't discuss them today. Today, I want to give you kind of a practical overview of how these aha moments come about and what you can actually do to help arriving at these solutions. So the fundamental problem with these kinds of problems that you might have in your work also is that, you have some kind of a goal state there. So, I mean, it's some kind of abstract state, a very bad visualization of an abstract state, right? That you want to get there, you are here, but you have no idea how to actually make this leap from here to there. So roughly your boss wants you to solve this problem, but nobody in the company has solved that problem. Nobody has done it before. How do you do it? And when we study these types of problems, then it's very, very typical that in the beginning, basically the progress is slow. So you're studying the problem, you're collecting information, you're talking to people, but it still seems that you're not making real progress. When somebody would ask you, okay, how far are you from the solution? Your boss comes and asks, hey, when do you have this? Then you say, I don't know. I have worked hard, but this is a difficult problem, right? So this is the hard part of coming to big solutions. And I think that, in our society, we have this tendency now to try to avoid this hard part and say that, we would like a workplace that is completely stress-free. But what I'm saying to you is that if you want to come up with good solutions and new solutions, then you need to enjoy this hard part also. Because this is the part during which you build up in your brain this kind of tension that you need to get from that point to the other point. You want to do it, it's a conflict in your brain, and you give the motivation to your brain to solve it. And only if you have done the hard part, Only then can the aha moment happen, and the aha moment basically is a sudden leap in this trajectory, where suddenly you get from a point where you thought you're not solving the problem to very close to the solution. This is why the example of Andrew Wiles is a nice one, right? I mean, as said, in his biography, it's written that he was about to give up. He was about to admit defeat, that he cannot solve this problem. And then he went and actually solved it. So he didn't understand that actually he was very close to solving the problem. And this is something that is typical and that we have to keep in mind when we solve complex problems. That it might seem that we're not solving it. It might seem that we're not close, but actually we might be. And then, as a scientist, I try to understand then what happens here. What happens when when you come from this hard part where it suddenly seems that you're not solving the problem to this quick jump. What happens? How can we facilitate this process? And to understand that better, I will try to do another kind of a visualization of what's happening. So let's start with this. What happens here? So basically, again, my visualizations are very bad. Sorry for that. But but what I'm trying to convey is that it's bad, right? I mean, I admit it. When you're trying to solve a problem, then you're collecting pieces of knowledge about that problem, right? So you start off with something, and then you collect more data. You collect more pieces of knowledge regarding the problem you're trying to solve. And that's fine. That's an important part of it. That needs to happen. But when you're trying to solve a problem, then you might not be aware of it. But what can happen and what happens is that basically you set up some constraints about the problem in your brain, so which is visualized by this very beautiful box. So we think of a problem, we try to solve it, but then because we have worked on it, because we have tried to solve it, we actually have set up some kind of boundaries. We are not aware of that, but those stop us from actually doing the work. I will bring one example. It's not really related to work. I mean, I cannot do 7 days or 7 years of work here, but let's try one example. Those who know the example should not yell aloud, right? So I'm telling you a story, and then I'm asking, how is this possible? And if you know the solution, then you raise the hand. If you don't know, don't worry. It's supposed to be like that, okay? So here it goes. A father and a son are in a car accident. The father dies on the spot. The son is taken to the hospital. The surgeon comes in and says, I cannot operate on him. He's my son. How is that possible? Some hands. Can I see more hands? Those who didn't solve it, no worries. I have seen people who are very smart and who are all in for the fight of feminism who cannot solve it. That was a tip, by the way. That was a tip. Because, of course, the surgeon is the mother, right? But the point of that problem is that it's set up the way that we use the words father and we use the word surgeon, and this basically puts our brain into this box. And though some of you might have this moment of, oh, what, this doesn't make sense, there's something, you come up with all kinds of crazy solutions about aliens and who knows what, right? But the point is the solution is really simple. And those who didn't solve it, no worries, it's not an intelligence test. And if you failed here, then it doesn't mean that you will fail at other tasks. What is important is that we all gain understanding that we have these kinds of boxes, invisible boxes. Here, in this task, it was easy to demonstrate it, right? It was easy to see the problem. However, at your work problem, where you're trying to solve something difficult, you don't know what the box is. The only thing I can tell you is that there probably is a box. There always is some kind of box. We always come in with some assumptions. And the problem is, as you understood, that, often the pieces of knowledge that we need to solve the problem are actually outside the box. So we somehow need to get rid of the box. And only then we can make these connections that are necessary for actually solving the problem. In our case, in this toy case, we had this example that, the fact that it's a female was outside the box. As soon as somebody was able to think outside it, the task was super easy, and it was even trivial. Okay? So I think this kind of a knowledge, that there always exist these boxes, is something already that's very powerful. Because then we are able to seek for ways how to get rid of the box. What can you actually do to help you to get out of this box, right? And the solution that has a lot of scientific evidence is that you want to get into a different mindset, which we could describe with these very simple words, that it's a state of mind where you are kind of open to all kinds of solutions and you're a bit relaxed. So I think some of you understand it very, very well, but just to bring an example, so usually when we work on a difficult problem, then we are very focused on that problem. We try to solve it. It creates tension. Our mind wanders around that problem. But what I'm telling you is that often, to find the solution to that problem, you need to relax and step back, basically, in your brain. And the feeling is also different, that you basically feel that you're not worried, you're not occupied by the problem, you are kind of in this other state of mind that you could say, okay, I'm open to ideas, I'm open to discussing. And one point where it becomes evident is exactly when you, for example, discuss with your colleagues. If you're in this very focused mindset, you're focused on your problem, anything that the other colleague says about this, your problem might seem stupid. I mean, he doesn't know anything about it. Why does he come and talk to me about it? But when you're in this open mindset, then you're saying, okay, yeah, I know much more about this problem, but perhaps there's something that this person can tell me. Perhaps there's another perspective that I haven't yet seen. And the simple equation, which is almost the equation I showed you on the first slide, right, is that kind of the way to get to these relaxed states is by having these 3 Bs: bus, bed, and bath. And I guess some of you already know this, that you can come up with great ideas when you are laying down in the bed, or perhaps some of you use the trick that when you wake up in the morning, you don't immediately grab your smartphone and start looking at sports news, but you actually, for a moment, you listen. Perhaps there's an idea. Because we know that during sleep in our brain, there are all kinds of processes that happen that basically try to build the puzzle for us. And probably many of you have heard about Archimedes and his story, how he found a solution in the bath. But I have found that many people find it strange of why somebody would think that good solutions come up in a bus. But there's a very particular reason for that, because one of the very famous aha moments occurred related to a bus. And here we can turn to another mathematician, Henry Poincaré. who was very fascinated with this question of how people solve problems. And he has many great stories from himself, but this one particular story is the legend that actually has created this idea about bus. And he was on a vacation, and he writes, "The incidents of the travel made me forget my mathematical work. We entered our bus to get to some place or other. At the moment when I put my foot on the step, the idea came to me without anything in my former thoughts seeming to have paved the way for it." So this is another classical example of how these solutions come. And note that this happened when he was on vacation. So he had left his mathematical problems behind. Now he's stepping on a bus and the solution comes to him. And when we study these kinds of moments, then we see that this is the rule, that these solutions do come when we are seemingly not working. So don't get me wrong. Some people do get me wrong and they say, yeah, woo, party, I now only have to lay in the bus and bath and bed, right? But what I'm telling is, you first need to do the hard work. You first need to get the pieces of knowledge inside your brain. And only then you can enjoy this kind of aha moment that comes from the relaxing of the state. However, the other way around also, that, you know, if you're a hard worker and you're used to actually focusing on your problems a lot, then what I'm telling you is that it actually helps to take the mind off from time to time. It actually helps to make breaks. And if we are, for example, we are supervising people, we have a large group of people who works for us, then we should be okay with that, that if we trust this person to solve the problem, then we also give him or her this kind of a free time, that if she or he tells us, okay, I'm going to take a walk, then we say, okay, yeah, go. Perhaps you will solve it, actually. So I think this science that has been done over the last decades is actually useful and can be used in the lives of almost everyone. And I think that one of the major points that I want to make for you is also that there's this paradox that, you know, often to find the creative solutions to work-related problems, we actually need to take time off. We actually need to be as if we're not working at all. So this is a trick to know. The problem with all of this, when I started to study these phenomena, the problem that I found kind of annoying is that all of this is unpredictable. So if you work hard on a problem, it would be nice that, yeah, you have worked hard on the problem, you go to the bath, you solve the problem. But it's not really what happens. I mean, sometimes, yes, you come up, but often you just go to the bath, the solution doesn't come, right? So, I mean, being practical, it would be nice if we would create or could create methods that kind of help you to actually come up with these solutions, that kind of maybe help you to get into this open state of mind. So in the last years, one of the topics that I have worked on is the question of whether we can actually break the damn box somehow, whether we can use some methods to break this thought box that the person might be in. So again, the person might have some assumptions in their brain, they are not aware of that, but could there be a method that we can use to actually trigger the breaking of this box? And we have worked on that. I won't really go deep into that because the organizers will otherwise put me in a box because I go many hours over the time. But what I can just tell you is that we have been experts in virtual reality for 5 or 6 years, and we now work on virtual reality solutions that basically put the person in a completely novel, completely different environment that, for example, uses details from psychedelic experience and very different experiences. So the person is in that virtual environment, and what we ask is whether this virtual environment, which is completely novel, completely different, whether it can help to break this box. The first studies we have done with this, with people who have depression, are very encouraging. So we see that the depression scores lower exactly because people say, hey, I saw a new perspective, I understood something different about myself. But what we want to do is actually to study whether this kind of solutions could also help people like you, who might be developing something, they might be programming something, they might be trying to come up with a new idea, and who are stuck there. So here's an invitation for you, that if you feel you have done the hard part, you are somewhere here. You don't know, of course, whether you're here, but you're somewhere here. Then, and you're interested in actually testing this thing that we are trying to do, then just write me or write to this email, and we can actually come to you, especially if you're here in Tartu, we can come to you with our equipment, and we can try to see whether this works. I'm not selling anything, I don't guarantee it works, I'm a scientist. I try to understand whether it works. But if it works, then I think it would be something that's very useful for many people. That's why we're studying it. At this moment, I don't know, but this is the interesting thing about science, right? You also have these problems, these questions where you don't know how to tackle them, you don't know how to solve them, but you try to come up with creative solutions, and this is one we have tried to come up with. Now, I think one of the key points that I have stressed already, but that I want you to also take home, is that when we want to come up with complex, novel solutions, then there's no magic, there's no easy way how you can simply achieve that. In all cases, you need to do this. In all cases, you need to do the hard part. And this is something I would like us to tell also to our children, for example, that everything should not be chill and everything does not have to be always cool and simple, but rather we want to have these challenges. They don't have to be the whole day, but at least some small challenges, because only if we have these challenges, we can come up with these magical moments, these aha moments. And here, to come back to Andrew Wiles also very nicely says that each of these breakthroughs are the culmination of and couldn't exist without the many months of stumbling around in the dark that preceded them. Everyone who has come up with a creative solution knows this, that first you need to do this hard work. And I hope all of you are capable of that. I hope that this talk gave you at least some tips how to achieve these aha moments. And I hope you will have many aha moments in your life, and perhaps even today in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaan. We have questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Also, I remind you to give feedback to Jaan. He'll appreciate it. I think there are several questions, but I will take the most upvoted one first. So the question is, would a 4-day working week help with productivity on hard tasks?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think, in principle, yes. However, I think we actually want custom solutions. We want solutions that are tailored to the people we have. Because there are many people who actually would like to perhaps take the last hours of a day off, rather than having a full day off, right? There are people who would like to take maybe hours in the middle of the day off instead of a full day. So if we have a working environment that we can actually co-create, we should have this discussion. And if we are flexible, then every employee could have their own kind of way of actually distributing these 8 hours of kind of relaxed state. But yes, I definitely when I talk to companies also, I always say that, for your most creative workers, you want to provide this kind of freedom. And for example, I mean, I also in the University of Tartu, I lead a group of many students, and I also give this freedom. I tell that, we have to solve these problems, but you should also take time off, and you should use these methods, actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Another interesting question. Could psychedelic drugs be useful for removing the box? That got a lot of likes from the audience. So you have to answer
Yeah, I
that
know.
one.
I mean, I know it always gets, right? And I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, our virtual reality experience is also inspired by these psychedelic experiences. However, I cannot recommend trying actually psychedelic drugs yourself. I mean, in the last years, there have been studies that show benefits of it, but they are always done in very controlled conditions when you are with professionals around you. Not work professionals, but kind of psychotherapy professionals, right? Just to be clear. So fundamentally, as a scientist, for me, these effects that psychedelics have, that they basically change the state of mind, and indeed, you could say that they break the box. It's very interesting, and it has inspired my work. However, as said, psychedelics come with their own problems. They are illegal, and that's why we want to have these alternatives where everyone who actually needs this kind of a solution can come. We can actually stop the trip as soon as the person raises a hand, right? You cannot do that with a psychedelic trip. If you're on the trip, you will be there for 6 to 8 hours in some cases, right? There's nothing you can do about it. So my message is, as a scientist, psychedelics are interesting. We should study them. However, we should also study the alternatives to them that take some inspiration from them. That's what we do partly in my research.
So we have a few people here who are apparently math inclined, because people are curious whether this first equation and the first mathematician, this a to the power of n plus b to the power of n equals c to the power of n, was this proved, or is it still to be proved?
Oh yeah, my talk must have been very bad if I didn't explain it to you that Andrew Wiles actually when he had this aha moment, then he actually proved it. Yeah, that's why he got the Abel Prize. That's why he is currently one of the most famous mathematicians in the world, because he actually at that moment basically found the final missing piece, and after that it was, I think, the year 1994, it was solved. So yeah, don't work on that problem anymore. It's solved, done.
Good. Another popular question was, what if I don't know what the final outcome ought to be? Can I have aha moments in open-ended situations?
My question.
Yes, definitely. I mean, again, often you don't know exactly what the outcome will be. That's okay, but often you have some kind of a vague idea. In many cases, it's very concrete, right? But we have also cases when we, for example, go more into the side of arts, where problems are very, very open-ended. But we know that there also you can have these aha moments, and that composers, painters, writers, they do have them. Because in the end, what the aha moment gives you is kind of a new solution, but it can also be that you find the problem with the aha moment, right? So all these techniques apply whenever you have a problem that needs basically some kind of a novel solution. It might be that it's predefined by your boss, by your client, but it might also be open-ended.
Good, thanks. Good to know. Then, how well do these principles translate into efforts where a whole team is trying to solve something?
Yes, it's one topic that I think hasn't been studied well enough still, of how much we can use these tips and tricks in that situation. however, fundamentally, I mean, I had this very bad visualization of the, the points, right? Of knowledge pieces, right? If you work in a team and different parts of the team work on different parts of the problem, provide different knowledge pieces, then fundamentally it's the same problem that we have to put it together. And there are cases known in the literature also where this kind of aha moment happens collectively when one gives one piece, the other piece, right? However, the dynamics of that have not been studied, and there might be some additional tricks that are needed. For example, if you're working on a team, you don't want there to be any dominant alpha male who is basically saying that, yeah, we have to go this direction, and basically these knowledge pieces are the most important one because they're mine, etc. You want to have this kind of equal footing where everybody's ideas are welcome, and we kind of try to charge everything based on basically the merit of the idea.
Yes, thank you. And I think we can take a couple of questions more. And the next one would be, would VR work for anxiety disorders as well?
Anxiety, or?
Yes.
Anxiety, yes.
Disorders.
Yeah. So this is something we started with depression because there were a lot of examples from psychedelic therapy that psychedelics work with depression. Again, don't try it at home, but with professionals, the right ones, right? In Estonia, currently it's not done. There will be one study about alcoholism with psychedelics, but not with depression. But we started with depression because of that. However, fundamentally, you would like to kind of expand that to other domains. For example, the next step will be substance dependence disorders, because again, psychedelics have shown a good effect. But then the next step is actually anxiety disorders, to try to understand whether we can also gain something. But again, I'm a scientist, I'm not selling anything, so at this point I don't know whether it will actually work for anxiety disorders, for example.
Okay, speaking of alcohol, people are very inclined to have fun, it seems, because someone has asked whether alcohol is also something that helps with the aha moment.
Yes, well,
Yes.
The answer will go on. Both with psychedelics and with alcohol, we have this kind of phenomenon of false aha. And you know it, basically people come up with all kinds of super great solutions. Under psychedelics, they figure out the truths of the world, they understand how the mind works. But then if you after the experience, after it has cooled off, read what you have written down or what you have recorded, then it doesn't sound that good. So in some situations, a bit of alcohol can help to relax the box. But if you get into the zone, then you have more of these false insights. And so you have ahas, but they are not really solving any big problem. So I think this phenomenon is an interesting one. Be aware of false ahas, try to have the good and great ahas. Thank you very much.